You don't need to be an expert in drawing everything under the sun to be a good drawer. If you concentrate on some basic forms that have the inherent qualities of other forms in them and get really good at drawing those things, you can apply those principles to everything you draw. The tree, organic forms like this are excellent subject matter to work with in this respect. So what we'll look at today is the geometry underlying the form of the tree. Hi everyone. Today we're going to get out of the studio, do a little plein air study, look at some things in the actual outside environment. The studio's wonderful. The thing about the studio though is it is a totally controlled environment, that there aren't as many variables that we have to deal with. When we do drawing, besides just sort of studying a subject matter, sometimes it's the sort of how you go about drawing things. And in terms of getting out of the classroom, drawing things in real situations, you encounter a lot more issues, uncomfortable seats, all sorts of things. You've been doing a lot of geometric forms up to this point, so I really want to get into the actual environment, work with some more organic forms, and the landscape's perfect for that. When you're dealing with the landscape, keep in mind that a lot of the things that you end up dealing with tend to be the same type of features that you would see on the human form, and while you may be thinking of it as a mountaintop or a field of rolling wheat, in the end it behaves very much like the human form and like every other thing that you're going to encounter in terms of drawing. Now, I want to do some gesture studies, and so for that I wanted to do a bunch of trees. Now, you can do this in your yard, you can do this from photographs, but ideally it's the design and the idea is that you get outside and you kind of do some of this stuff live in an environment where things change around you and you have some different variables that you don't have in a controlled environment such as the classroom. If you were researching something like a painting, you may go on the internet, get everything you want from the internet. For example, trees. You get thousands of trees on the internet, but when it comes down to it, nothing can be really beat working from the live situation, seeing the actual three-dimensional depth you're dealing with and trying to capture that. Keep in mind, anything you do image to image is 2D to 2D. So whenever possible, you want to do a three-dimensional study of something. We think of trees as pretty simple subject matter, but they really contain all the geometry, all the subtle things that drawing has sort of worked to develop over the centuries. So that's what our subject is today. A humble tree. If you look at a tree, one of the things about trees and landscape drawing is you have an endless variety of subjects. So no two trees are alike, so you could draw trees over and over and over again, never ever have to do the same one twice. Ones that you've done, you can see that this is basically a series of spherical forms grouped into a larger sphere. And you can see each sphere has its own sense of light and shadow on it. It's not just like a big round balloon type shape. It's all these organic forms that are sort of somewhat spherical, catching the light, casting shadows, bouncing light, and all the different subtle things that light can do. Now, you're all familiar with gesture study. You did it in drawing one. You've probably done it before that. It's a rapid sort of drawing where you're capturing the essence of the subject, often the volume of the subject. What we want to look at in the next series of drawings is using kind of that type of line, the loose, fluid gestural line to create our drawings. But we want to focus on something else. We want to modify the idea of gesture drawing a little bit. So we're not going to do your traditional gesture drawing, the one that you're sort of familiar with, but we'll use that and we'll kind of branch off from that, doing extended gesture studies or working quickly essentially to capture the basic structure of the tree before we sit down and really draw it out in full detail. The type of drawing I'm doing here is a modified gesture study. It is definitely a timed drawing. What I want you guys to do is do some timed drawings, and there's a reason for that. The idea is that if we have an open-ended time frame to draw in, we don't have to make decisions quickly. We can come back to them. We can resolve issues over whatever length of time we set aside for it. When we have something like a 5 to 8 minute gesture study in this case, that means there's no second chances at things. So it helps you develop a sense of focus where you go in and you instantly recognize the main structural elements that you need to deal with. That's really why you're doing this time study, so that it trains you to see more quickly, so that when you sit down to draw an object, you don't just start randomly with a light or shadow. You look, you see the structure of the object, you understand how that object exists in space, then you're able to render it in a much more believable form with a stronger sense of illusion. And you can see the finished drawing is similar to a gesture drawing, but it's really built around those geometric forms. So as you approach any of these structures, first thing you want to do is identify the geometry inside it, the spheres, the cylinders, the cubes. Identify where they are. Find where the form radiates out from. In the case of these pine cones here, again, think of them as sort of egg-type forms that have an axis to them. They have a front end and a back end and a direction to them. And so when you see them with a grid on them, then you can understand the direction. When you go to fill in the details, by that I mean the pine needles on something like that, they'll all radiate out from the center of that form, and there'll be a logic and a sense to them. Again, here's the Joshua tree that I'm dealing with. Find the geometry of it first. Once you have that geometry, then you can build on that form, and the form will be much more dimensional, much more spatial, and just much more believable overall. So things to remember when you're doing this: you're going to be outdoors, so take a hat. You want to try to have something to sit on. Take plenty of water with you. Again, you could draw the same tree over and over again. Just get up and move around to different locations. Again, you're looking at the dimensionality of things. So if you were to draw something from more than one angle, you'd have a much stronger understanding of its overall structure. Good luck with that. I think you're going to find it's interesting. Again, you go back to your gesture studies, but modify it and really work with the geometric forms that you're seeing in the subject matter that you choose. Good luck.